Chapter 5, Section 3, The Crusades. In this section, you're going to read about wars fought over religion and resources. Think of other reasons why people go to war. Do you accept these reasons? Why or why not? Questions to think about and should be able to be answered by the end of this video are: why did the Crusades take place? How did the Crusades cause lasting changes in Europe? Key terms you will hear in this section are, shockingly, Crusades, and key people and places to keep in mind are Pope Urban II, Peter the Hermit, Saladin, the Holy Land, and Jerusalem. On November 18th, 1095, a crowd gathered in the French town of Clermont to hear an urgent message from Pope Urban II. You common people who have been miserable sinners, become soldiers of Christ. You nobles, do not quarrel with one another. Use your arms in a just war. Labor for everlasting reward. The war to which Pope Urban II called the people of Europe was in Palestine, a small region on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea. Jews, Christians, and Muslims called this place the Holy Land. To all three religions it was sacred. Now, said the Pope, the Holy Land had fallen to an enemy. Christians must win it back. Causes of the Crusades. Over the next 200 years, the Church launched 4 bloody wars to capture Palestine. These wars are called the Crusades. The word comes from crux, the Latin word for cross. Crusaders, from knights to peasants, carried the Christian cross into battle against the enemy, the Seljuk Turks. The rise of the Turks. The Seljuks, a Turkish ethnic group, came from Central Asia. They moved into Southwest Asia, where they became Muslims. By 1071, the Turks had invaded and captured much of the Byzantine Empire. Then they took the sacred city of Jerusalem from the Byzantines. The Byzantine emperor in Constantinople asked Pope Urban II to send knights to fight the invaders. The Pope agreed. Attacks on pilgrims. Since about AD 300, European Christians had been traveling to Jerusalem. These people were pilgrims, people who journeyed to a sacred place. When the Turks took over Palestine, they turned the pilgrims away. Some were attacked and murdered. The violence occurred even though Islamic teaching states that Jews and Christians are fellow believers in God. The Turks' attacks gave the Pope a religious reason to call Christians to action. Land, trade, and wealth. The Church had other reasons for launching the Crusades. Europeans wanted not only Palestine's holy sites, but also control of its key trade routes between Africa, Asia, and Europe as well. This map shows Palestine's ideal location lying close to all 3 continents. The Church also had its eye on the rich empire of the Byzantines. Although Pope Urban II had agreed to help the Byzantine emperor, the two were rivals. The Pope had to weaken the Byzantine Empire and control its wealthy trade routes. This possibility encouraged European merchants to join the Crusades. A series of Crusades. Pope Urban II's best hope for reopening the Holy Land rested with the lords and their trained, experienced knights. But before the lords could assemble armies, a band of common people set out to fight the Muslims. Peter the Hermit and the People's Crusade. In 1096, before the First Crusade, Peter the Hermit, a small, ordinary-looking man who wore monk's robes, gathered an army of common people. In some cases, whole villages packed up and followed him. Peter, however, had no experience in organizing such a large group. As more people joined, food became scarce. Crusaders broke away to loot towns. Many died when local troops fought back. Others were taken prisoner. Peter and the rest of his army went on to Constantinople. The Byzantine emperor advised him to wait for help from an army of knights. Peter agreed, but his army rebelled. His soldiers attacked the Turks, who easily defeated them, and only a small part of his army survived. At last, armies of knights arrived in Constantinople. They treated the Byzantines badly, killing and looting. The Byzantines regretted asking for their help. Joined by the last of Peter's army, the knights captured Jerusalem in 1099. While taking control of the city, the Crusaders killed 10,000 of its Muslims and Jewish inhabitants. This was the First Crusade. Later Crusades. After the First Crusade, Christians set up 4 kingdoms in Palestine. The Muslims made repeated attacks to destroy these kingdoms. This forced the Christians to launch 3 more crusades to keep control of the region. Then, a strong Muslim leader rose to power. He was known to the Europeans as Saladin. By 1187 AD, or CE, Saladin had retaken Jerusalem. King Richard I of England tried to persuade Saladin to return the holy city to the Christians. Saladin refused, saying, "To us, Jerusalem is as precious as it is to you, because it is the place from where our prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made his journey by night to heaven. Do not dream that we will give it up to you." Even so, Saladin had great respect for King Richard, so he agreed to reopen the city to Christian pilgrims. Results of the Crusades. Though Christians never recaptured the Holy Land, the Crusades changed Europe in important and lasting ways. In particular, they increased trade and made the use of money more common. For much of the Middle Ages, most people tended not to use money. Instead, they exchanged services for land or protection. But crusading nobles needed to buy armor and supplies. They raised money by letting individuals, and also whole towns that were built on their lands, buy their freedom. In this way, feudalism grew weaker. Towns became more important, and money came into widespread use. During the Crusades, European ships carried armies and supplies across the Mediterranean Sea. These ships returned from the Holy Land with rugs, jewelry, glass, and spices. Soon, these goods were in great demand. Thus, the Crusades helped trade grow during the later Middle Ages.